What are these doing here?
I can explain.
Explain why you hid them.
I was protecting you.
Samantha Hayes had always trusted her husband, Michael. Their life together seemed perfect, until one afternoon when she decided to take a walk by the riverside. There, hidden in the bushes, she found a box. Curious, she opened it to find photographs of Michael with another woman, Rebecca Ellis. The pictures were taken in secret, showing them in intimate moments together. Her heart dropped as she realized Michael had been having an affair behind her back. The discovery shattered her world, and she felt as if everything she knew was a lie. When Samantha confronted Michael, he confessed, but tried to minimize the betrayal, claiming it was a mistake. He begged for forgiveness, saying it meant nothing, but Samantha knew deep down she could never trust him again. She stayed calm and pretended to forgive him, but the anger and heartbreak were growing inside her. She couldn't believe that the man she had trusted so much could betray her like this. As she gathered her thoughts, Samantha started to dig deeper into the affair. She learned that Michael's relationship with Rebecca wasn't just a short fling. It had been ongoing for months. Michael had even told Rebecca he loved her while pretending everything was fine at home. Samantha felt completely deceived, not only by her husband but also by Rebecca, the woman who had stolen him away. She couldn't understand how Rebecca had been so manipulative, and it made her angry. It wasn't just Michael who had hurt her, it was Rebecca too. Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, and she needed to know more. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how deep the lies had gone. Michael had been sneaking around with Rebecca, but there was more to it than just the affair. Samantha began to learn more about Rebecca and her involvement in the betrayal. Through some old acquaintances, she discovered that Rebecca wasn't just some random woman. She was manipulative and knew exactly what she was doing. Rebecca had made sure to keep Samantha in the dark while steadily taking Michael away from her. Samantha was furious. Rebecca hadn't just been involved in the affair. She had schemed and worked behind her back, intentionally targeting Samantha's marriage. It wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was calculated, and it hurt even more. Samantha felt betrayed not just by Michael, but by Rebecca as well, and that stung deeply. Michael was the one she had loved, the one she trusted, but Rebecca was someone who had been an active part of destroying everything Samantha had built. As Samantha dug further, the anger inside her grew. She couldn't let them get away with this. The betrayal wasn't just about Michael's lies. It was about the manipulation, the calculated moves Rebecca had made to destroy her life. Samantha knew she couldn't forgive either of them, not when she saw the full extent of the betrayal. It was clear now that revenge was the only way she could regain control of her life and make sure they felt the consequences of their actions. Samantha's anger began to turn into a plan. She knew she couldn't just let Michael and Rebecca walk away without facing the consequences of their actions. So, she started to carefully plot her next move. She began by learning everything she could about Rebecca, her background, her job, and even her social circle. Samantha wasn't going to leave anything to chance. She needed to gather as much information as possible to ensure her revenge would hit hard. It wasn't just about exposing the affair, it was about making them regret ever thinking they could betray her. Samantha spent days gathering small pieces of information, speaking to people who knew Rebecca, and learning about her weaknesses. She also started to dig into Michael's past, looking for any secrets he had kept hidden. The more she uncovered, the more she realized how many lies he had told her. But instead of confronting him immediately, Samantha kept her cool. She was patient, waiting for the right time to make her move. Her plan wasn't just about revenge, it was about taking back control. Samantha knew she had to be smart and calculated. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that her revenge needed to be more than just exposing the affair. She wanted to hurt them in the same way they had hurt her. She wanted them to feel the sting of betrayal and regret for underestimating her. Samantha was no longer just the victim. She was the one in control, and she was going to make sure they knew it. Samantha's plan began to take shape. She decided that the first step would be to confront Rebecca, but not in the way most people would expect. Instead of being angry or hostile, Samantha approached her with a calm, calculated demeanor. She acted as if she had forgiven Rebecca and wanted to move on, but deep inside, she knew exactly what she was doing. As they spoke, Samantha subtly pushed Rebecca into revealing more about her life, her relationships, and the affair with Michael. Rebecca, feeling a sense of false security, started to let her guard down and speak freely. Samantha was quick to take advantage of the situation. She carefully guided the conversation, making sure to ask the right questions. Throughout the talk, she casually mentioned things that made Rebecca uncomfortable, and in the process, Samantha managed to extract valuable information about Rebecca's personal life, which she could later use against her. The entire conversation was recorded, giving Samantha irrefutable evidence of Rebecca's manipulative behavior. With the evidence in hand, Samantha knew it was time to strike. She didn't just want to expose the affair. She wanted to destroy Rebecca's reputation. Samantha began to gather even more details, contacting people who knew Rebecca, digging into her past, and finding things that could ruin her professional and personal life. Samantha's calculated approach was working, and with each passing day, she felt more empowered. She wasn't just getting revenge. She was taking back control of her own life. Samantha's plan was now in full motion, and she had one goal in mind: to make Michael and Rebecca pay for the hurt they had caused her. The first part of her strategy was already set. Rebecca's reputation was about to be shattered. Samantha used the information she had gathered from their conversation, including the recordings and details of Rebecca's secrets, to craft a carefully timed attack. She started by sending the evidence anonymously to Rebecca's employer, knowing that Rebecca had worked hard to build her career. Samantha made sure to include all the damaging details that would make it impossible for Rebecca to continue her work without facing serious consequences. But she didn't stop there. Samantha also sent the recordings of their conversation, highlighting Rebecca's manipulative behavior, to mutual friends and acquaintances, making sure everyone knew the truth about her. Meanwhile, Samantha didn't forget about Michael. She gathered the most damning evidence she could find about his betrayal, photos, messages, and more, and sent them to his closest friends and family, ensuring they all saw the extent of his lies. The fallout from this was just as severe. Michael's reputation was ruined, and those who once admired him now turned their backs on him. The shame he felt was unimaginable, and Samantha took solace in knowing he was suffering the same way she had. In the end, Samantha watched as Michael and Rebecca's lives crumbled. The people who had betrayed her were now dealing with the consequences of their actions. It wasn't just about exposing the affair. It was about making sure they felt every ounce of the pain they had caused her. And as their lives fell apart, Samantha felt a sense of justice and empowerment that was beyond anything she had ever imagined. She had reclaimed control and made them regret underestimating her. With Michael and Rebecca's lives in shambles, Samantha finally felt the weight of the years of betrayal lifting from her shoulders. The anger and heartache that had fueled her revenge began to fade, replaced by a deep sense of relief. She had taken back control of her life in the most powerful way possible, not through violence or chaos, but through intelligence and precision. Watching them suffer didn't bring her the happiness she had expected, but it gave her a sense of justice that made her feel stronger than ever. As the days passed, Samantha realized something even more important. Revenge hadn't been the true source of her healing. It was her own ability to rise above the pain and use her experience to rebuild herself. The act of taking control of her life had empowered her, and in the process, she discovered a strength she never knew she had. Now, with Michael out of the picture and Rebecca nowhere to be found, Samantha began focusing on her own future. She started a new career, one she had always dreamed of, but never had the courage to pursue. She surrounded herself with friends who truly supported her, and slowly, she rebuilt her trust in others. She realized that while the past would always be a part of her, it no longer defined her. Samantha had become a woman who no longer feared betrayal, but instead embraced the idea that she could overcome anything life threw at her. The betrayal had been painful, but it had also been the catalyst for her transformation. Samantha knew that she would never let anyone have that kind of power over her again. From that point on, she lived for herself, stronger and more resilient than ever. Samantha's life began to take on a new light. As she moved forward, free from the burden of betrayal, she found herself embracing the beauty of independence and self-love. The emotional scars from her past slowly healed, not because she forgot what had happened, but because she had learned to live beyond it. She no longer defined herself by the betrayal she had suffered, but by the woman she had become through overcoming her newfound freedom. Samantha built a life that was hers and hers alone. She took up hobbies she had long neglected, traveled to places she had always wanted to visit, and formed deep, meaningful connections with people who respected and supported her. Her career flourished as she pursued a path that aligned with her passions, something she had put off for years. The joy of waking up every day knowing she was living life on her own terms filled her with purpose. Despite all the pain she had endured, Samantha found herself looking back at her journey with a sense of gratitude. The betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but it had been one that propelled her to take charge of her own happiness. She realized that it wasn't the revenge that had brought her peace. It was the freedom she had found in reclaiming her life. As she moved into this new chapter, Samantha knew one thing for sure. She would never allow herself to be controlled by anyone again. She was no longer the woman who was betrayed. She was a woman who had survived and thrived, stronger and wiser. And with that, she embraced the future with open arms, knowing she was ready for whatever came her way. Samantha's journey, though painful, had led her to a place of strength and peace that she never thought possible. She realized that the real victory was not in the revenge she had taken, but in her own personal transformation. The power to heal, to rebuild, and to find joy in the little things was hers, and no one could ever take that away from her again. She began to see her past not as a story of betrayal, but as a story of resilience. The hurt she had felt became a distant memory, replaced by the pride she now had in herself. She was no longer a woman defined by the actions of others. She was a woman who had learned to stand tall, no matter what life threw her way. Samantha's relationships with those who truly cared about her deepened, and she found herself surrounded by a network of people who supported her unconditionally. They admired her strength, her ability to move on, and her dedication to her happiness. Samantha had become an inspiration to those around her, a living testament to the fact that even the deepest wounds could heal with time and self-love. The man who once had her heart, the woman who had betrayed her, and the life she had left behind were now just distant chapters in her past. She had emerged from the darkness into a future full of possibility. Samantha wasn't the same person who had discovered those painful secrets in the Riverside bush. She was a woman who had learned to rise from the ashes stronger, wiser, and free. And now, as she looked toward the horizon, she was ready for whatever the future held. Because she knew she could handle anything that came her way. Samantha's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. She had spent years shackled by the pain of betrayal, but now she was truly free. The experience had turned her into a woman who no longer feared the darkness of the past, but embraced the power she had found within herself. Each day, she woke up grateful for the lessons she had learned and the strength she had gained. As time passed, Samantha grew even more confident in her new life. She traveled the world, exploring places she had once only dreamed of visiting. The excitement of new adventures reminded her that life was full of possibilities, and she was no longer bound by the limitations of her old life. She surrounded herself with people who lifted her up, who saw her for who she truly was, and who valued her strength and resilience. Samantha also began to mentor others who had experienced betrayal and heartbreak. She shared her story, not to dwell on the pain, but to show others that there was always a way forward. Her message was simple. No matter how hard the past had been, you could always rise above it. It wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about reclaiming your life and finding joy in who you were becoming. Through all of this, Samantha never looked back with regret. She understood that the journey had shaped her, and without the pain, she might never have found the strength she now carried. She had been through the worst, and yet she stood tall, ready to face whatever came next, because she knew that she was capable of overcoming anything. Samantha had truly healed, and in doing so, she had found peace. Not because of what she had done to others, but because she had learned to let go, forgive herself, and embrace the future with open arms. Samantha's life had come full circle. The woman who had once felt broken, betrayed, and powerless was now unrecognizable. She had grown stronger, wiser, and more at peace than she had ever been before. Her past, with all its pain and heartbreak, had become the foundation for the person she had become. She no longer looked back with anger, but with understanding. She had learned that the only way to truly move forward was to let go of the past and embrace the future with an open heart. With each passing day, Samantha discovered new joys in life that she had never noticed before. The simple things, like a quiet morning spent with a book or a long walk through nature, became moments of gratitude. She realized that happiness didn't come from revenge or validation, but from within. She had found a deep sense of fulfillment in knowing that she was enough, regardless of what anyone else had done to her. Her relationships with friends and family deepened, and she finally allowed herself to trust again. She had learned to set boundaries, to protect her peace, and to surround herself with those who truly cared for her. She no longer gave energy to people who took advantage of her kindness. Samantha had found a new sense of self-respect and self-love, and it radiated in everything she did. As she looked back on her journey, Samantha didn't feel sadness or regret. She had come to understand that everything she had been through had been a necessary part of her growth. She was now living a life of purpose, one that she had created for herself, and she couldn't wait to see what the future held. Samantha's transformation was the ultimate proof that, no matter how hard life could be, resilience always had the power to lead you to a better place. The betrayal that had once felt like it would destroy her had, in the end, become the very thing that made her stronger. She had learned that her worth didn't depend on anyone else's actions or opinions, but on her ability to stand tall and embrace her own power. As she continued her journey, Samantha embraced each day with a newfound joy and purpose. She found beauty in the small moments, in the quiet days spent alone, and in the time spent with the people who truly mattered. Her relationships flourished because she was no longer afraid to let people see the real her, the woman who had learned to overcome, who had chosen herself above all else. She also began to help others who had been hurt by betrayal, using her story as a way to empower them. Through her work and her example, she showed them that healing wasn't about erasing the past, but about accepting it and finding the strength to move forward. Her journey became a beacon of hope for others who felt lost in their own pain. Looking ahead, Samantha felt excited for the future. She had let go of the bitterness, and in doing so, she had opened herself up to new possibilities. Her life was now filled with promise and freedom, and she knew that no matter what challenges might come her way, she had the strength to face them. Samantha's past was behind her, but her future was a blank canvas, ready to be painted with all the possibilities she had once thought were out of reach. She was finally living for herself, and it felt like the most beautiful victory of all.